So the author Sean Covey once wrote, "We become what we repeatedly do." Now he was talking about habits, and this is very true. The reality is most of us are far less consciously in control of our decisions and our actions than we realize. The majority of our behavior and our thought processes, they're just autopilot habits, whether they're helpful or they're hurtful. Now, if you can create good habits like financial habits, health habits, relationship habits, you can live a great life. But if you adopt bad habits, your entire life can be ruined really fast. So the question is often asked, how long does it really take to develop a new habit? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So there's this popular idea that it takes 21 days to build a new habit, but is that based on science or a big myth? The origin of the 21-day length of time most likely came from a plastic surgeon back in the 60s, and his name was Dr. Maxwell Maltz. He began noticing this strange pattern among his patients. After he'd done his surgery, he found that it would take a patient about 21 days to get used to seeing their new face, or when they had a limb amputated. He noticed that his patients, they would sense that they still had their phantom limb for about 21 days before adjusting to the new situation. So after all of this, he decides to write a book in the 60s, and that book was called Psycho-Cybernetics. You might have heard of it. It became a big hit, sold over 30 million copies. Now, after he published that book, it went on to influence many of the biggest self-help gurus of today. Brian Tracy, the late Zig Ziglar, Tony Robbins, but there was really no scientific experiment done to back this up. This was more just a general observation, and he said in his book it took a minimum of 21 days. And then when you have enough people repeating something enough times, eventually everyone starts to believe it and they just accept it as fact. So what's the real scientific answer? How long does it really take to form or break a new habit? There was a study published in the European Journal of Social Psychology by Philippa Lally about this. And that study went for 12 weeks. 96 people chose one new habit, and they had to report each day on whether or not they did the behavior and how automatic the behavior felt. Now, some of the habits were really simple. They were like drinking a glass of water with lunch. Others were a little bit more complicated and difficult, like exercising before lunch. Now, at the end of the 12 weeks, the researchers found on average, it took about 66 days for those new behaviors to become automatic. This was the broad average. Some people did it faster, others took up to 254 days. So the reality is it will probably take you a solid 2 months to build a new behavior into your life, not 21 days. The good news is, in that same study, the researchers found that when you miss implementing that new habit for a day or two, it's not going to materially affect the habit formation process. So in other words, it doesn't matter if you mess up every now and again. Building better habits, it's not an all or nothing process. The key is just to keep on doing it for at least 2 months, and then it should stick. Okay, so hopefully that answers the question. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow.